Now, it's no secret that things are tough for everyone right now, but in particular, if you are getting older and getting near retirement age and you can't really afford to retire, it's particularly difficult for somebody in that position because you're kind of too old to get a job, but also not well off enough to retire. And I think this is a situation that more and more senior citizens these days are finding themselves in. There was a story out of Business Insider this week that talked to several people who are nearing or at retirement age that are kind of in this position and how they're handling it. So I figured this would be a good thing to go over here in the video because I'm sure a lot of people out there can relate to these scenarios. They talked to one guy, 58 years old, who doesn't know if he's ever going to be able to retire. And he spent most of his career working for a consumer products healthcare division of a pharmaceutical company, and he hasn't been working since March of 2024. So he's been out of work for an entire year, and he's been looking, but many jobs pay below a six-figure salary. And that's what he was earning just a few years ago. Now, he could retire by the end of 2025, but he would be living on half of the budget than he was hoping to. So not really the greatest scenario for somebody looking to sail off into the sunset. He said, I could tap into my 401k by the end of the year, but then my retirement will be much lower than I was hoping it would be. And now he's starting to believe that he may never get the job that he's looking for, especially when it comes to the salary he's hoping to get. Because the thing is, if you want to retire and have prosperity in retirement, you need to keep working and building that up to the point where you feel like you're going to be able to actually have something, you know? If you are just going to retire and be living off of scraps, it's not really a good position to be in. In fact, Business Insider has heard stories from over 600 older Americans who are either looking for work or are still working. And the ones who are unemployed said it's been very difficult to find a job due to their age, and there's also a lack of open roles that meet their salary expectations. And who wants to go backwards, right? Like this first guy, if you're making over six figures 3-4 years ago and you want to take a job today making even less than that, I mean, nobody wants to do that. So they talked to another guy who's 60 years old, and he was laid off last year, and he's been looking for work ever since. And he's saying that unemployment has definitely hurt his finances and has forced him to move out of Los Angeles, where he has lived for 30 years, and he made the move over to Nebraska. Talk about a change. He said he's had plenty of interviews, and also he even has made it past the first round of interviews with 6 different companies and is yet to receive a job offer. And he's starting to think it is due to his age. He's 60 years old. And the sad part is not only are you competing with your age, but he says, you know, if you don't work for 6 months, then you essentially become irrelevant in the job marketplace due to how fast everything is changing in the job market right now. He says if you see over 100 applicants and the job has been posted for longer than a day, don't even bother, because they're probably only looking at the first 30 to 50 that come in. And I remember one of my viewers who used to work as a recruiter, she wrote me an email, what was it, like maybe a month or month and a half ago, something like that, because I kind of talked about something like this in a prior video. And she said they would get thousands of applications for these online job postings, and you know, a bunch of them would be fake, and it's a tremendous amount of work to try to sift through them and figure out even which ones are legitimate and who's even qualified. You would get a bunch of people applying who are not qualified as well. So just because a lot of people apply doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, you are up against a lot of competition. It just means that the recruiter, the person who is working on, you know, looking at your application, has a lot of work to do in front of them. And obviously the more applications there are, the less likely yours is going to be seen. But it doesn't necessarily mean that a lot of those applications are worthy either. Now, some of these older Americans have even been told straight up that they were too experienced. Others said that they were passed over for younger applicants who would accept less money. And also, many of them have been told that higher paid white-collar workers and positions in those fields are becoming more and more rare. In fact, many of the layoffs that we have seen over the past couple of years have been exactly those type of jobs. White-collar work, people that make multiple six figures a year. Just look at all the tech layoffs. Look at those. Those are people exactly in those categories. They talked to another woman in her 60s. She said it's been hard to generate enough income to survive over the past few years. So what she ended up doing is she moved from California to Panama, the country, and she has benefited from a lower cost of living there, but also has struggled trying to find steady work. She actually has some income that she gets from Airbnb through a guest house she rents out, but it's not enough to cover her essential expenses, and she's had to already rack up over $2,000 in credit card debt just trying to keep up. I mean, here's the thing, guys. I've heard from many of you guys who have moved abroad and moved to cheaper places in order to escape the high cost of living here in the United States. But if you are somebody who's escaping the high cost of living and moving to somewhere else and you still can't make it, that is a huge problem. Now, maybe Panama is not the best place to do it. I don't know anything about Panama. In fact, I've never heard from any viewer of my channel that has moved to Panama as a desirable retirement destination for people in America looking to escape the high cost of living here. But that just goes to show you, you really need to do your research before you do move somewhere in hopes of a cheaper and better life, because you might be surprised not to find it once you get there. But inevitably, what a lot of these people in this category are doing now is they are having to settle for blue-collar work that pays significantly less. Things like working as a cashier, driving Uber, or even waiting tables. But other people say it's not so bad doing these type of jobs because they provide flexibility and human interaction that they're looking for. So it's not all doom and gloom. In fact, I talked to one guy here that retired in 2018. He was a manager at IKEA for over 30 years, and he said retirement became boring pretty quickly, so he signed up for the gig platform TaskRabbit, and now he gets paid to assemble furniture and mount TVs, and he's made about $55,000 through the platform in 2024. So that is not a bad side hustle. Now, obviously, you got to be handy and enjoy doing and being capable of doing that physical type of labor, but if that's something you can do, why not, guys? He says, you know, I sat behind a computer for years, planning new stores. The physical nature of tasking was refreshing. So now he's liking being out there, you know, doing real physical work with his hands rather than just being trapped at a computer and a desk all day. Now, obviously, some people in this category are also still working. In fact, the vast majority of people over 55 are still working. There's about 38 million people over 55 who are still in the workforce right now, and only 1.1 million who are unemployed who are over 55. So the vast majority are still working. And a lot of people are kind of confused and looking at their finances and thinking like, you know, when is the right time to retire? Because it's obviously the answer is really different for everybody. And it's not something I'm going to attempt to answer in this video. I'm just giving you other people's points of view here. They talked to a woman, 63 years old. She's unsure of how much she'll need to retire or what age she might stop working entirely. She lives in Wyoming, and she worked as a freelance travel director and planning assistant for the last 2 decades. So she earns in the mid to high 5 figures annually. And she thinks she will need to work at least on a part-time basis for the next few years in order to stay afloat. And she has about 250 grand in her IRA accounts, and she doesn't own property, and she house sits for friends. Apparently, she's even putting some money away on the side in order to save up for a mortgage, and she's gonna buy a house with a friend. Not sure how good of an idea that is, but hey, everybody has to make their own decisions. But not everybody just wants to sit around and do nothing in retirement. She's even thinking, even if I have enough money, then I think I'm gonna want to work at an animal shelter, you know, part-time, at least to do something and have something to do. And then you have people on the other end of the spectrum who could easily retire right now, people who are millionaires, who are either retiring early or other people who don't want to retire at all. This guy, he's 57, he retired early, and after working 35 years in the aerospace industry, he now lives in Denver. He had a robust salary during his career, and he kept his money in Vanguard low-cost index funds. And now he has determined that he saved enough money through investing to get him through his 90s. And one thing that he actually regrets is being too conservative with his money earlier in life, but since he was able to retire early, it's given him a chance to kind of, you know, go out there and live life a little bit and spend some of that money. I saw an entirely separate story from a guy saying, listen, I'm 63 years old and retirement is around the corner, but I'm reading a ton of articles about why you should never retire. Is there any truth to that? And I think the main reason why people are seeing this type of advice is because of just how unfulfilling retirement can be if you don't have the proper finances, if you don't have the right lifestyle set up for yourself in retirement. Like, you have to have some sort of a vision, right? If you just retire and have no idea what you're gonna do on your first day of retirement or what retirement is gonna look like for you, I could see that being extremely unfulfilling. But if you already have like the next 6 months mapped out, starting the day you retire, I think it's gonna be a great time for somebody in that position. Now in 2024, MassMutual did a survey and they found out that 67% of retirees described themselves as happier now than before retirement. But the rest of the people said that they were not happier due to feelings of loneliness, and they said that there were fewer dating and romance opportunities in retirement than they initially expected. This is why it's very important to remain active and have a social life in retirement, because a lot of people, their entire social network revolves mainly around their work. And the moment you retire, that all goes away. And not just that, but a lot of people have their identities wrapped up in their career or their work. You know, like part of who they consider themselves to be is wrapped up in that, the feeling of purpose, what they do for a living. And when you retire, that disappears as well. According to another survey by T. Rowe Price, they found out that 48% of retirees who are working again are doing so for financial reasons, but 45% who are working are in the workforce for social and emotional benefits. So this is why people are seeing so much advice out there about not retiring, because you know, if it's gonna put you in a situation of financial stress and isolation from your peers or your friends or your social network, then it's probably a better idea to remain working even if you don't need to for the money. But you can also take an entirely different approach like my mom did. She retired from the post office and she's happy that she's not working there anymore, and now she's doing her own thing. You know, she's making arts and crafts and selling them on the side, going to trade shows and doing something that she loves just to make a little extra money. So I think that is so cool. You know, I'm so happy for her, and I'm so happy that she's doing something that she actually really likes to do rather than a job that she hates. So just because you retire doesn't mean life has to be over. You can just kind of switch gears and do something that you've kind of always wanted to do but never really had the chance to do. But the biggest concern about retiring right now is, are you actually going to be able to afford to stay retired even if you do retire? Because of all the uncertainty going on right now, especially with inflation, guys, it is very difficult to plan accurately for retirement these days. I mean, who would have thought 5 years ago that pretty much everything that we need to buy would be 50% more expensive just 5 years later? How do you plan for something like that when you're planning retirement? The truth is, you really can't, which is why about 63% of Americans right now are worried more about running out of money in retirement rather than death. I mean, that is just insane. But I think one of the best ways to combat this is to figure out what you want to do after retirement. Like I was saying earlier, you need to have some sort of plan. So just to sit around on the couch and watch TV probably isn't a good idea. But, you know, if you have some sort of goal after retirement, that's going to keep you fresh. Maybe even the best option for some people is not even to fully retire from their job. Maybe the best thing is to cut back your hours and start working full time at the same company, especially if you're somebody who likes your job. You know, if you're somebody who doesn't really want to retire, but you're also like kind of on the fence, like, I can't work forever, but I really like the people I work with and I enjoy being here. Well, then maybe that's your opportunity to kind of just scale back. You don't have to leave entirely, but, you know, drop down to working just 20 hours a week or less if you want. And you still get some of that social interaction, still make a few bucks, but get to enjoy your life more. Now, there are 3 major financial regrets that really set people back in retirement. And I want to go over them here before we end this video so you guys can get an idea of things that you should be avoiding. The first thing is obviously going into debt. You know, retiring with debt can lead to a lot of long-term financial stress, especially if you have a fixed income in retirement. This one couple, they missed one credit card payment and then it just ballooned, and within 6 months their balance doubled, you know? So it's just like, it can easily spiral out of control if you don't know what you're doing when it comes to debt. And for this particular couple, you know, their debt situation kind of spiraled out of control. They went thousands of dollars into credit card debt just to be able to pay their bills. Now their credit scores have completely tanked. In fact, according to AARP, 53% of households 75 and over had debt as of 2022, compared to just 32% in 1992, guys. That is not moving in the right direction at all. Obviously, debt is becoming a crisis in this country. We're sitting at all-time high credit card debt amounts, and that just continues to rise. So you definitely don't want to be in that category if you're nearing retirement. Then, of course, the next thing, the biggest financial regret people have is not saving enough for retirement. In fact, 28% of working adults have no money saved for retirement at all. In fact, even people who are saving money for retirement, only 31% of people who are saving right now for retirement believe they are on track to actually have enough money to retire on, and that's down from the 40% number just back in 2021, which I think is more attributed to the extremely high increase of the cost of living more than retirement savings, because you can be saving the same amount of money for retirement as you were 4 years ago. What has changed? The cost of living, you know? So all of a sudden, that money just isn't going as far. Like I said a little bit ago, you know, how do you plan for a 50% increase in the cost of living in 5 years? You just can't. So the one big piece of advice is you got to start saving for retirement as early and as young as possible, and to save as much as possible without overdoing it. You don't want to put yourself in the poorhouse where you're eating ramen noodles every day for dinner in order to save for retirement. You need to have balance, but you shouldn't be putting in the minimum either, and always take advantage of that employer 401k match if you have one. And then the biggest regret when it comes to retirement and financials is taking too much out of the 401k too soon. One woman, she took out $110,000 and drained her entire 401k to put a down payment on her home, and then she learned the hard way that this lump sum withdrawal is taxed at 45%. She said, if I were to leave that money alone, then it would be worth a lot more today. And the best thing to do in this scenario is to kind of establish a safe withdrawal rate, so that way you're not taking out too much too fast. I don't know how she ended up paying 45% tax, most likely because the huge withdrawal in one shot probably put her in a higher tax bracket. Plus she had the regular tax that she would have to pay on that money anyways. So she probably got hit with a double whammy. You had this huge increase in your taxable income basically overnight, plus the regular tax that you're going to pay for withdrawing the money. And for the longest time, experts recommended a 4% withdrawal rate each year from your 401k. But now, due to longer lifespans and less optimistic projected returns, they are now downgrading that to a 3.7% withdrawal rate. So something to think about when you're in retirement. So if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. And if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.